Hi Homeworthy, I'm Cathy and welcome to my home in Stockholm. Come on in!
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Cathy Nordström and I'm a textile designer living in Stockholm, Sweden with my 3 kids and my husband and my little black and white dog Dixie. So we live in a house outside Stockholm. It's a very leafy suburb called Lidingö. It's about 15 minutes outside central Stockholm. And the house that we live in is between classic functionalism. So it was built in 1925. So we moved here 8 years ago and we were actually living in another house in Lidingö with our children. I think Faye, my youngest, was about 2-3 years old. And we'd been looking for houses for a while online, not finding anything. And then I saw the listing for this house and I remember shouting to my husband, I was like, I found the house. I have to go to this viewing of the house, but this is it. I could tell from the pictures online. So I came and the minute I walked inside the door, I knew that this was home. I'm a very gut kind of oriented person. So I instantly knew that this was the place I wanted to call my home. This is the hallway and this is actually an extension. The house was built in 1925 and I think they added this extension in 1930s or even 1950. There are 2 extensions to the house. So this is 3 steps down from the other house. So it's a bit dark. And when we moved here, it was just a white box and it was horrible. So I just wanted to make it even super cozy and kind of add to that darkness that is inevitable here. So we put up a grasscloth wallpaper from Designers Guild, and I know every person who was born in the 1940s and 50s and grew up in the 60s and 70s hates grasscloth. I don't. I love it, and I actually have it in 2 rooms in the house now. And we just put in this kind of stone traditional Swedish flooring, and there are just lots of things in this room that I love. The one thing that I cherish the most is probably the chair that I inherited from my grandmother Florence. And it was my aunt who actually asked me maybe 10 years ago if I wanted this chair when my grandmother passed away. And it was covered in this fabric which I loved, which was this kind of leopard floral mix. And I love that my grandmother chose this because I would have chosen the same kind of fabric. So this was actually one of the first fabrics that I designed for my own collection. So it was inspired by the original fabric that my grandmother Florence chose. So hence the name, Florence. And basically it's lots of textiles. We have this traditional Swedish röllakan rug, a flat weave, by Berit König in these kind of blue-purple hues. And it's one of my favorite pieces in the house. And I hate it when my husband and boys leave their wintry shoes on it. And my husband's like, well, how can you have a rug that, we can't put our shoes on? And I'm like, that's what that rug is for. This rug is pretty. This ceramic lamp is a vintage one from Italy. I have a thing for vintage lamp bases. I don't like newly produced ones. So I try to source vintage lamps and just have them rewired at the electrician. So it's a fairly easy thing to do. So this is a vintage Italian from I think the 1960s. It's a bit kitsch, but I love it. So this room we call the grotto, grottan in Swedish, because it really is like a dungeon. It's north facing and constantly dark, and instead of trying to light it up by painting the white white or anything, I just did the opposite. So we have these teal blue walls and I painted the ceiling the same color. This serves as a guest room, but we never have guests staying over. Occasionally my little brother and his family, but mostly it's the grotto for our children to play PlayStation. So this is where they hang out with their friends. And we have this big bed. We used to have like a kind of strict ottoman or sofa, which was super uncomfy. It looked good, but it was so uncomfortable. So we decided to put in a bed here, and sometimes they have friends staying over and they spend the night here, the kids. But basically it's the PlayStation room. And we have the Roman blinds is a fabric from Schumacher. And I saw Matilda Goad has this beautiful red bookshelf in her home. So I was super inspired a couple years ago. So we decided to paint this small kind of storage unit bright red. And I never want to paint another color. I think I might change my mind, but I love it. It's so great together with this teal blue. And basically we just have this big, super comfortable armchair in my fabric. This is where the kids hang out. I rarely spend any time in here, except when I store my stuff. We also have this painting, which I love. You either love it or you hate it, but it's called Mother, and it's by this artist called Emma Jelk. And it looks like a photography from afar, but it's actually painted. It's an oil painting, or acrylic maybe. But I said before that I like art to be a conversation starter and slightly provocative, and this truly is. People do not like the fact that she has stretch marks on her breasts and stomach. Like my kids are slightly disgusted by it, but I love, love, love this piece. This is Motherhood, and I think it's just so beautifully painted, and I love this dark kind of white background. It pops. So that's actually one of my favorite pieces in the house. I love color. I love color in my, when it comes to clothes. I love color when it comes to my own designs and my fabrics. I feel like I'm going to a funeral when I'm dressed in black. So I think it's just very much me. And when it came to, I remember as a kid when I came home to the families of my friends, where the parents actually put some time and effort into the home decor, where you could see that somebody cared. I loved being in those homes. I lived in the UK when I was a kid, small. I moved to Sweden when I was 6 years old. But I've always loved those kind of cozy interiors where you feel like you're embraced, I have a very hard time for, white walls, concrete floors, no curtains. There's certain architecture that really needs that kind of decoration, but I myself thrive on layers and layers and layers of textiles, books. I love books. There's like books everywhere, magazines. So I didn't really have a common thread when it came to color. I usually start with a fabric or a painting, and I work from that. So for instance, I love the Schumacher fabric that we have for the Roman blinds here. So the wall color and the bookshelf, everything kind of works together with this red, teal, orange, mustard fabric, ECAT fabric. But I also changed my mind a lot. I also repaint a lot. So that it evolves, it depends on what kind of mood or state I'm in. But basically the more color, the better. So once we decided that we were going to make this kind of a guest room, I cannot have a bed without a headboard. It's just not going to happen in this house. So naturally I chose my own fabric. I don't only have my own fabric in the house. That would be horrible. That would be living in a showroom. But this is one of our stripes. It's called Annalisa, and it's actually horizontal stripe. It runs like this on the roll, but when you use it for smaller pieces, you can just, use it however you want to. So I wanted to have it as a vertical stripe here. And basically, even though my kids hang out here all the time, I still wanted to feel, comfy and luxurious and thought through. I would never, toss in just IKEA because the kids are here. I think that's like a thread throughout the whole house. Nothing is too precious. So this is a very expensive bed for teenage kids to hang out in. This bedspread is from a brand called Once Milano, which I sell these bedspreads in my shop in Stockholm. But I hunted it down. I saw it in a house and garden a couple years ago. So I bought one for myself many, many years ago. And since I started my own business, I reached out. So I become wholesale for Once Milano in Sweden. But these are honestly like the Rolls Royce of bedspreads. They're expensive, but you'll never look back. They're the best ones ever. So yeah, let's move on to the rest of the house. So this is the guest loo in the hallway, and it's wallpapered in my wallpaper called Blanche, which is this really kind of dark, moody oak leaf wallpaper. It is what it is. It's a tiny little guest loo, but I wanted to add layers here too. So we have some art, we have this rattan mirror, we have this little curtain in a Beata Heumann fabric, and basically it's just super tiny, but I just wanted to add and make it feel less sterile, so hence the fabric and the wallpaper, and a little bit of potpourri, which smells amazing. I received that as a gift from a house guest, and she said you should always gift the host something that they cannot find in their own country. So she had purchased this in, I think, Florence in Italy, from this small family-owned business who makes these amazing potpourris. I've never owned potpourri, I've never had it in my life, but it smells divine, so it's perfect to have in the guest loo. I would say the style of our home has changed a lot over the 8 years that we've been in this house. So when we moved in, I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and I was exhausted. So all these kind of small decisions were a bit overwhelming. So when we moved into the house and we had the painters and everything, every wall was white. Like I was just painting everything white. Today we only have white, but it's like a soft beige white in this room and the kitchen. There are no other white walls in the house. So style-wise, the house has evolved a lot. It was in really good condition when we moved in. The previous owners had taken really good care of the house. Style-wise, I think it's evolved along my business. I started my own business 4 years ago, like in the textile business. So I'm a textile designer and I love pattern and I love color. And I always I've never finished with my home. I think now I'm in a good place. So I don't feel like I need to redo anything in the near future, but there's always like new furniture coming in, replaced. I'm a vivid, online auction hunter. So I kind of fine-tune the house every year. And I just think that's a really fun part of living in a home, that you can actually, it changes, like life changes and the kids grow older and maybe their needs change and you want more privacy, or the other way around. So a house is in movement, I think, and nothing is very static. So the one thing I would say is that I've become more confident in how I use fabric and color and pattern, as opposed to 8 years ago when I maybe wasn't as confident. But yeah, it's constantly changing, but I think that's a really fun thing. Okay, so we are now in our combined living room and dining room area, and it's an L-shaped room, which has proved to be very, very tricky furnishing. It's driven me nuts, to be honest, a couple of times. Small problems, but still. So we use this formal dining area for everything. We do homework here and we have dinners with friends, obviously, but it's not just a dining room. It's really a place which we use. I don't like having rooms that you don't use. We don't live that big, so we use every inch of this house, but still. The focal points in this house is obviously the painting, which was our first real art that we proper art that we bought, and it's by a Swedish artist called Peter Fri. And we saw this in a gallery in southern Sweden where we have our summer house. And me and my husband Eric were standing in front of this painting. Just really, it sucks you in. And I love he does these kind of landscape paintings, and it always has this white board in the bottom or as a frame. And then basically a lot of furniture in our house is vintage that I've had reupholstered and fixed, but the dining table is custom made for us. And it came about, the guys who did our kitchen, which you will see in a bit, when they were renovating the kitchen, they Philip told me that he has this kind of side business with 2 friends where they make furniture. So we started talking and I was like, okay, but I need a dining table. Is that something you can make for me? And they have their aesthetic. So I just sent him some things that I like. And then I said, just do your thing. So it weighs literally a ton, this table. But what I love mostly about it is this kind of shape here on the edge, this rounded shape, and the legs, which are all individually shaped. So no leg is the other one, identical to the other leg. And he said, I remember Philip said that it was very liberating working that way because it didn't have like a mold or anything that he had to stay true to. He could just shape them the way he wanted it to be shaped. And the color, this kind of teal, green, blue color, actually comes from my ceramic collection, which I will show you in a while, from a Swedish ceramic factory called Uppsala Ekeby. So this table we love. It's not the most practical because the legs are very chunky and it's asymmetrical. So when you're setting a table for 8 people, it's not the best, but I don't care. I love it. It's so beautiful. So this is the ceramic collection I was talking about. All the green stuff is from Uppsala Ekeby. And they were very prominent in like the 1920s, 30s, 40s. And they're just, they're all slightly individual depending on who made them. My favorite one is called Anna-Lisa Thompson. I actually have a fabric named after her, but they're just divine. And I started collecting them 15 years ago. Unfortunately, they've become quite pricey, so I can't, make those bargains anymore. But I love this collection. I keep adding bit by bit. But this green color is some kind of dominant figure in my home. Other than that, there's a bunch of other ceramics, just stuff I like. I think a bookshelf is a very true testament of who lives in that house. I do not like styled bookshelves. That's probably my least favorite thing in a house because it's just like, says nothing about who lives there. Probably a decorator who did it, or you just like, I don't know. I love books, like I said before. So it's a wide variety of books. This is my favorite book for anyone who wants to know. It's called Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It is honestly one of the best books I've read of my life. And my husband just finished it and he was equally amazed and happy to have read it. So read this book. The rug that we have in our dining room is from the same brand that did the rug for the living room. It's called Vandra Rugs. It's a Swedish brand run by 3 women, and they have all their production in Ukraine. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, it really posed, a really huge problem for them. They had to move their whole factory from one side of Ukraine to the other in order to maintain safety and the livelihood for all the women who do their weaving, which they successfully did, so it's quite impressive. It's a flat weave, but we have these small details which make them interesting. For instance, there's like gold thread in this one and that one. We can see it here, so it's like gold thread running vertically, so it looks like a stripe. Otherwise, it's just like the great quality rugs that last for a lifetime. And this is probably the most gray thing I have in the house. I don't like gray, but it's gray bluish, which is okay. So when it comes to art, I don't want to be too precious about it. I like just like adding. We just put this one up on top of the other one last week. This is a Lido by Lennart Rode, Swedish artist, which I bought like for nothing on the equivalent of Craigslist. And had it reframed. And this one is my great-grandfather drew this. And I found a bunch of his old paintings in my parents' house a couple of weeks ago. And I had them reframed. And so both of my brothers got a few and I kept a few for myself. And they're just very, very precious to me. He was in the Navy and he worked for the late Swedish king. But he was also an artist, and he wrote books and he drew in all the photo albums for my mom when she was a kid. So he was very, very, very creative, and that runs in the family. So that's very dear to me, that painting. So now we're standing in the living room, which is adjacent to the dining area. And there's a lot happening here, just because I like collecting things. But the sofa is probably the piece of furniture where I spend the most time. I read, I love being in this, this area of the house because I can see everyone. I can look straight into the kitchen, I can see the TV room where my kids spend a lot of the time. And it's just a nice spot to look at all the things that I love. And the sofa is actually also like a Craigslist find that we had reupholstered in this dark chocolate velvet, and the legs were ugly, so we did this little skirt in order to hide the ugly legs. But it's like a quality sofa, so that's what I do when I look for vintage or secondhand pieces of furniture. I know what brands I'm looking for, the ones that will stand the test of time, and I go online searching for them. So this is an old Danish sofa, Danish brand. And there's a mix of cushions in it. Some are mine, and these two floral ones, which I love, are from the apartment in Copenhagen. Other than that, we have this rug, which was also kind of custom designed to work with this space. It also goes in this kind of teal blue color, which, thinking of it, probably is the color that is used the most in this house, together with the reds and greens. We have a dining table from Svensk 10 and this very modern Danish table in gold from Hay, which is also like a Craigslist find. But I like the clash between the more classic design and the modern kind of goldy metallic feel. These armchairs are a Swedish designer called Bruno Mattsson, and they are the most comfortable chairs in the world. I also think it's really important to have tables everywhere. Like, I want you to be able to put down your cup of tea or your cocktail. So I have coasters in hand. So you don't put your cocktail on this side table from Svensk 10, which I love. Other than that, it's just like a bunch of books, ceramics, small things. Almost all of the lampshades are from my own brand, covered in fabric from us. I have a few neutral lampshades, but not much. And these ceramics, which I know these vases also from Uppsala Ekeby, although they're not green. The candlelight holders are. But these are from the woman I talked about, Anna-Lisa Thompson. And I just love them. I cannot leave this room without talking about the painting, which is probably one of the favorite pieces in my house. It's by a Swedish artist called Isak Hall. I think we only have Swedish artists actually in the house, which I think is pretty cool. And I just wanted to show you this piece before we move into the kitchen. This is an old, like Gustaviansk chest of drawers, a traditional kind of Swedish piece of furniture, and it was gray. And I don't like gray, as I said before. So I had commissioned an artist called Holly Björklund. She's a British girl, but she lives in Stockholm, to paint it. And she kind of ended up in this kind of bluish, blue-gray that I have on the rugs. And I love it so much. It just kind of elevated the whole room. It's a unique piece of furniture that nobody else has. I love that kind of stuff. I don't like going to a store and buying something that someone else can buy. So that's a treasured piece, as is this cupboard, which is called the Kit Kat cupboard, because it looks like a Kit Kat. So it's the same guys, Diaform, who made the dining room table, the side tables, the green side tables that we have, the console table in the living room. Basically, their collection evolved together with me when I needed things for the house, and they designed them to fit within their aesthetics. But I got a bunch of unique pieces of furniture that I would never have been able to afford. So that was just, the timing was perfect. I'm a self-taught textile designer. I haven't studied it in college or university. So I was a graphic designer by, I have an education in graphic design. And I did that for a few years, and I freelanced as a graphic designer. And as much as I love and appreciate graphic design, especially typography, I never felt that it was like my calling. I knew that I wasn't, the best in the class. But I kind of did it anyway. When my youngest was born, I stumbled across this online pattern design course. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it literally was a light bulb moment. Like, I knew there and then that this is what I wanted to do. So whenever she slept and the boys were at kindergarten and she had her naps, I kind of took this online course. which was great. And I did that for a couple of years, licensing my fabrics. But I did feel this massive disconnection to my work. And I was talking to a friend on the phone, because I've always loved interior design, but I'm not an interior designer. I've always loved textiles. And I was like, I really want to do my own textile line. Because in Sweden Sweden is famous for the Scandi minimalism, and I'm not really sure why. I think that kind of came in the 90s, because we have a history of very rich, like, patterned interiors and ornamented interiors and painted walls and ceilings, and it's beautiful if you travel across Sweden and all these old castles and mansions. So I don't know where the minimalism really came in and why that stuck, but it really has stuck. So a lot of Swedish homes are beige. So I kind of saw a hole in the market where I could actually design patterns that I wanted in my home myself. And I was talking about this with my friend, and I was like, maybe I do this in a couple of years. And she said, well, why don't you just do it now? And one of the things that I knew that I really, really wanted was I wanted to be produced in Sweden, because we have a great heritage of like textile design and textile production. So that's kind of how it came about 4 years ago. And since then, it's just been spiraling. So we're moving into the kitchen. It's getting dark, it's Sweden, so you have to bear with us. We had a designer, she's Australian, but she lives in Stockholm. Her name is Rebecca Moore, and I found her on Instagram because I wanted someone to come in with a non-Swedish eye. Like, I wanted the kitchen to feel like you can't put a label on it when it was designed. It could have been in the 90s or the early 2000s or whatever, but I did not want anything that screamed 2010 or 2020. And so she designed this kitchen together with me, and it just turned out to be, this is the room where we spend most time as a family. And I wanted to have a seating area that was comfortable, and I wanted to bring in fabric in this otherwise kind of sterile environment as the kitchen can become. So we upholstered the kitchen banquette in my fabric. It's called Faye, the name of my daughter. And all our fabrics are hand printed in northern Sweden, like in the same way they have been since 1946. So it's just this beautiful upholstery, colorful, fun, vintage 50s inspired print. And it's deep, so it's very comfortable. I kind of wait until the day when I come down in the kitchen and I find one of my kids' friends sleeping here. But yeah, we spend a lot of time here. The table is an antique Swedish table, typical for Sweden, called bockbord, which I found at an online auction house for nothing. The chairs are new, one of the few modern pieces in the house, but I felt that we needed something modern to contrast the table. The inside of the cupboards is painted in this kind of rusty, warm red, similar to the cupboard I just showed you, and it just adds to this warmth that I think this kitchen really eludes. And the blinds are Schumacher fabric too. One of my favorite prints from them, I think it's called Pomegranate or something. And I think it's really nice getting fabric into a kitchen. It adds something. It's maybe not the most practical, but I don't know why everything has to be so practical all the time. But otherwise, it's just full of storage. And then we have this space. We make our morning coffee, I make my tea, we toast bread. But it's just a kitchen that we use like a lot and that we love. And it's a part of the whole living room area. So I wanted it to be pretty, and I wanted it to have a lot of fabric and these kind of plates on the wall, which most of them are like vintage Hungarian stuff that I found on Etsy. I spend a lot of time on Etsy. And also these, I think it's from Northern Africa, Malaika Linen is the company that makes or sells these. I think it's Fayoum Pottery is the name of the factory. This is from First Dibs. And it was this really boring shade, which I just did not like at all. So I had a friend who's really creative. She made this little skirt, which we just put on top of it. And it made all the difference. This is our TV room, and we spend, like, apart from the kitchen, I keep saying that we spend most of the time in this room, but I think maybe this is the room where we spend most of the time. It's really small. It used to have an opening to the basement, so you could like go from this room straight into the kitchen, but we closed that off and made it even more kind of secluded. And this also faces north, like the dungeon I showed you initially. So we did the same thing. Like we kept it really dark, cozy, grasscloth on the walls, this kind of blue ceiling, and a like comfortable sofa, wall to wall, bunch of cushions, and like just super cozy. The cushions are a mix of my own and vintage ones. And this ottoman is a collaboration that I did with a Swedish brand called Dusty Deco. So we did 2 ottomans fully upholstered in fabric, which is something you cannot find in Sweden. I know you can find a bunch of them in the UK and the US. So they approached me and asked me if I had something special I wanted to do. And I was like, yes, I want to make an ottoman that is fully upholstered, legs and everything. Not sterile, not minimalistic, nothing like that. So we have this one, and then I have a bigger one that is square. But basically it's just super cozy. Once again, fabric from Schumacher, but I love this fabric because it's embroidered. So it's like really unpractical, like most things in my home, but beautiful. And we have games and family photos. The traditional Swedish dalahäst. So I collect these. I think they're so pretty. You can find them everywhere in Sweden. Every flea market you go to. And all these kind of small like memory things that we bought, you know, travel. I love this angry guy from the movie Inside Out. He's my favorite character in that movie. Maybe because I'm also a bit angry sometimes. But yeah, it's all these kind of just small things that make a home. So we're standing by the staircase, which is really located in the heart of the home, the center of the home. And this was one of those things that made me kind of just go, oh, when I saw the house. I love that it has a landing. In our old house, we had the steepest staircase, and it was terrifying, and our 2-year-old fell down backwards. So I was like, I want a staircase with a landing so they don't die if they fall down the stairs. But what really caught my eye was this banister, which is wood, and it's an original from 1925. And I just love the detail of it. I think if someone were to make it today, they would never put all this time and effort into it, which is why I love old stuff, because things were allowed to take time. Like nowadays, everything just has to go so fast, and it has to be like content worthy for Instagram and whatever. It's just, there's never time to actually just be creative and let it take time, because that's not efficient, or you don't make enough money or whatever. So I love old things. And so this was, you know, love at first sight. It's a beautiful piece of art, really. Let's go upstairs. So this is the master bedroom, and the same kind of, you know, aesthetics apply here as the rest of the house. It's just lots of layers, fabric, cozy, comfortable. That's probably my main, you know, word for the house, cozy and comfortable. So we have the bedspread from Once Milano, which we had downstairs in the grotto, but this is this kind of rusty red, which I love. The cushion here is from Studio Dugan, British interior designer, and she has a shop called Trove in Notting Hill, which is amazing. So I carried this back from London. It weighs, it's just really dense, and my husband thought I was nuts. But I squeezed that into my suitcase, which I'm really glad about. And we have the shades here are in our Annalisa fabric, the Swedish ceramist I talked about earlier. So this fabric is inspired by her designs. We have these antique French nightstands with a bunch of books and magazines and, you know, jewelry and stuff, and I keep these notes from my kids for Mother's Day and stuff like that. I like kind of stacking them here. A picture of my very handsome husband. And he has the same on his side, kind of little notes from the kids. And then with the curtains, the fabric of the curtains is our own. It's called Marianne. It's one of our best-selling ones, actually. It's inspired by a Swedish rug weaver called Marianne Richter. She worked for Märta Mås Fjätterström, which is probably Sweden's most famous rug maker. So this is like, they're really heavy, and they have this like kind of, they're French pleats here, and I remember the seamstress, her fingers were bleeding when she was making these curtains, so she wasn't very happy with me because it's a really thick kind of upholstery fabric, but it also gives this really luxurious feeling to the curtains. The striped wallpaper is from Helene Blanche, a Danish designer. I love her wallpaper. They're a bit more minimalistic than my designs, and I think they work very nicely with my fabrics, and so that was a really nice, addition. And then we have this chest of drawers, which I love, which we had lacquered this kind of, oh well, it's the same green now that I think of it, as the legs downstairs in the ceramic collection. So I have like clothes and workout clothes and stuff like that in this, and just like pieces of jewelry, perfumes, another Italian ceramic lamp, our lampshade, and I adore these bamboo mirrors, which we have in a few different spots in the house, Franco Albini, which I always find on Etsy too. And I have this little thing, which I love. It's very precious. It's this little box, which my grandmother Barbro gave me. And we have, I don't know what the name is, the English name for this. It's called videung in Swedish. And she kept these. I had two, but I lost one. She kept these because she thought they reminded her of her husband, my late grandfather's earlobes. Like soft and hairy. So this is the actual one that she gave me probably 20 years ago. So I've managed to keep that throughout my moves around the world. So I'm happy with that one. So this is one of my son's rooms, and this whole kind of area that we're in is also, we're on top of the hallway. So this is part of the extension. So this is also like 2 flights of, it's like a bit lower than the rest of the house. And this was a big room before, and we divided it into 2. So my boys' rooms are kind of mirrored. So they both have 2 windows, a bed, and then this wall with wardrobes and storage. And in this room we have used a lot of my own fabrics. So the wallpaper is our wallpaper. It's called Stig. It's also inspired by a Swedish designer who was a ceramist called Stig Lindberg. And Pelle has the same in his room, but it's the blue version. So, and when it comes to wallpaper, I adore wallpaper. It's really like putting clothes on a room. It's just adds something. You dress the room and it just instantly becomes more cozy. So we have wallpaper in all the bedrooms, the staircase, the loo downstairs. But I would probably refrain from using wallpaper in a huge, bigger room. But when it comes to kind of confined areas and smaller rooms, definitely go for wallpaper. It's so nice. And then the fabric is ours too. It's called the Met, and it's inspired by a 1,000-year-old kind of vase that I saw at the Met in New York. This really kind of modern zigzag pattern, which I thought was so cool that they painted all these years ago. And the chest of drawers, everything is like secondhand or vintage, apart from beds and sheets. And once again, we have another Franco Albini mirror. This area was important for my son. It used to be like a cupboard, but he wanted a space to have his perfumes and, started looking in the mirror. It's like 13 years old, so I thought it would be nice for him to have like a space where he could like keep his stuff. And we have 2 more of those paintings I talked about downstairs that my great grandfather made or Drew. They are from a summer house in southern Sweden, which is like the royal residence, because he worked for, like I said, our late king. So their summer residence was close to Sofiero Slott, which is a castle down south in Sweden. So he was, we have all of those little drawings that he made around the house, which are very special to me. We have vintage chair, Exelius, upholstered in my fabric. This fabric is Kinondo. It's inspired by Kenya and a resort that our friends have called Kinondo Kwetu, which is, honestly one of the best spots in the world. So I designed that fabric when we were there on vacation. So we have this mid-century desk, photos. I love pinboards. I love putting fabrics and little notes and, photos and stuff up on there. So the kids all have one each in their bedrooms. I like to put art on the floor too, like, stacked, and maybe you switch it out from time to time. Just some photos. This is Malte's first love letter. You might hate me for showcasing this, but I framed it because I thought it was the cutest thing ever. I think maybe he was like 4, 5. He got a love letter from a girl at kindergarten. But, the same thing here. It's just color. I think painting trim, painting windows, closets, radiator covers, it just instantly lifts a room, as opposed to if these were white. I always say, like, if you hesitate, just go for the bolder option. You'll never regret it. You will regret, being a chicken when it comes to interior design. And if you regret it, it's just paint. You can always repaint it. Home to me means everything. I'm very much a homebody. I think also in Sweden, where it is dark half of the year, it's extremely important for us to kind of make the home a secluded, cozy, warm place to spend your time. Home is where my kids grow up. This is their childhood. That makes me kind of emotional just talking about it, but this is their childhood home. This is where we form the memories with them. This is where we have our, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday dinner after soccer practice or gymnastics. And this is where we have popcorn in front of the TV on Friday nights, and where we read books, and this is where we fight. This is where we argue who's going to walk the dog when it's pouring down. This is my most happy place in the world. This is where life happens, and it's happening right now, and I just want my kids to remember this place as their safe space.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.